Hello, I am tomek8bit, your storyteller, and now I will take you in the world of that story. Legend of Sleepy Hollow, from the imagination, and that's really real. Uh, I, I think what I mean, Greece Grimly. Original story by Washington Irving. And now I will take you in the world of that story. Legend of Sleepy Hollow. In the bosom of those spacious coves, which end in the east earshot of the Hudson lies market a rural port. She is known by the name the Tarry Town. Not far from this village, perhaps about 2 miles, there's a little valley or a lap of land among high hills, which is one of the quietest places in the whole world. From the listed repose and place a peculiar character of its inhabitants, who are descendants from the original Dutch settlers. The sequestered glen has long been known by the name Sleepy Hollow. Drowsy, dreamy influence seems to hang over the land and to pervade the very atmosphere. Some say that the place was bewitched by a German doctor during the early this treatment. Others than an old Indian chief, the operator of wizard of his tribe, held as vows that before country was discovered by Master Henry Hudson. Certain it is the place continues under the sway of the bewitching power that holds a spell over the mind of the good people, causing them to work a continual reverie. They are given of kinds marvelous of beliefs, are subject of trances and visions, and frequently you see strange flights, hear music and voices in the air. The whole neighborhood abounds occult haunted spots and twilight superstitions. Dominant spirit. However, that haunts that enchanted raid of an apparition of a horseback without a head. It is said by some to be that the ghost of Hessian trooper, whose head has been carried away by cannonball in some nameless battle during the Revolutionary War, and who is ever and anon seen by country folk hurrying along in the gloom of night as on the wings of the wind. His hounds are continuing to the valley, but extend at times of the action the roads at such in the vicinity are at charge. Most authentic historians of those parts allege that the body of the trooper is buried in a churchyard. The ghost rides forth to the scene of the battle in nightly quest of his head, that his rushing speed with which he sometimes passes along the hollow, like a midnight blast. Is owing to his being belighted and a hurry to get to the churchyard before daybreak. The spectre is known at country firesides by the name of the Headless Horseman of Sleepy Hollow. The visionary propensity I've had mentioned and not confined to the native inhabitants of the valley, but occasionally imbibed by everyone who resides for time. However, we awake they may have been, they entered that sleepy region. They are sure to inhale witching influence of the air and begin to grow imaginative, to dream dreams and see apparitions in this by place of nature. Them about a 40 wide of the name Ichabod Crane, who sojourned, or as he expressed it, tarried in the Sleepy Hollow for the purpose distracting the children of vicinity. He was tall, hastily lank, with narrow shoulders, long arms, legs, and but daggered a mile out of his sleeves, the feet that might have served for showers, and his whole frame loosely hung together there. His head is small and flat at top, with huge ears, large green, glassy eyes, and a long snide nose. To see him striding along the profile of hill, windy day with his clothes bearing and fluttering about him, One have mistaken him for genius of famine descending upon the earth, or some scarecrow eloped from a cornfield. His schoolhouse was low, building in the one large loom, rurally constructed of logs that were partly glazed and partly patched with leaves of old copybooks. A schoolhouse too, within a rather lonely but pleasant situation just at the foot of the woody hill, with a brook running close by an formidable birch grown tree at the end of it. From hands of the lows of people's voices, accompanying over their lessons, might have heard on drowsy summer's day, like the hum of beehive, interrupted now and then by the authoritative voice of the master. When school hours were over, he was the companion of playmate of the larger boys, and the holiday afternoons would convoy some of the smaller ones home who happened to have pretty sisters, or good housewives for mothers, noted to the comfort of the cupboards. Indeed, it behoved to him to keep on good terms with his pupils. The revenue arising from his school was small and would have been scarcely sufficient to furnish him with daily bread, for he was a huge feeder, and though long had the lightning paws of an anaconda. But to help out his maintenance, he was, according to its county custom in those parts, boarded and lodged at houses of farmers whose he instructed. With this he lived successfully that week at time. He was going the rounds of the neighborhood with all his worldly effects tied up in a cotton handkerchief. In addition, he was a singing master and picked up many instructing young folks psalmody, those that ingenious way commonly dominated by hook and by crook. A worthy pedagogue on the tolerably enough and was taught by all what understood nothing that all labor of head work. We have a wonderfully easy life of it. The schoolmaster is a man of importance in the famous circle of a rural neighborhood, considered a kind, adult gentleman-like personage of vastly superior taste to the rogues country swains, and indeed inferior in learning only to the person. His appearance is apt to occasion some little stir at the table of tea or farmhouse in addition of a dish of cakes in per stereo teapot. All men are rather so peculiarly happy in smiles of our country damsels. How he would feature among them a churchyard between services on Sundays, gathering grapes from the wild vines that overrun the surrounding trees, reciting the announcement all the epitaphs of the tombstones, or sauntering on with a bevy of them along the banks of the mill pond while the more bashful country bumpkins hung sheepishly back, envying his superior's elegance and address. His appetite for marvels, his powers disgusting and rather extraordinary, both had an ill grace, but his residence in his spellbound region. No tale was too gross of monstrous for his capacious wallow, and so of fearful pleasure was to long evenings with the old Dutch wives, as they sat spinning by the fire and listened to the tales of ghosts and goblins and haunted bridges, particularly of the headless horseman, or galloping Hessian of the hollow. He wouldn't frighten them willfully with speculation upon comets and shooting stars. But if there was a pleasure in all this snugly curling in the chimney corner of chamber where, of course, no spectre dared to show his face, it was deadly purchased by the terrors of to walk homeward. What fearful shapes and shadows beset of his path amid the dim, ghastly glare of snowy night! How often was he appealed by some shrapnel covered snow, which, like a sheeted spectre, besat his very pale, and how often was he thrown into complete dismay by a smashing, rushing blast, howling among the trees. The idea that was grabbing Hadrian of one of his nightly scurryings. Others, however, were mere terrors of the night, weapons of might and walk in darkness. The highlight but all of these evils have periled their life. Of in the spite of the devil and all his works, if path has been not been crossed by being of the causes more perplexity to mortal band with ghosts, goblins, and whole race of witches put together, and that was a woman. Among the musical disciples who assembled one evening each week to recitate his instruction in psalmody was Katerina van Tassel, the daughter of knowledge and standard Dutch farmer. She was universally famed not merely for her beauty, but her vast expectations. Ichabod Crane had a soft and foolish heart towards sex, and it's not to be wondered at that so tempting her morsel soon found favor in his eyes, more especially after he had visited her in her paternal mansion. Old Baldus van Tessel was a perfect picture of thriving, contented, liberal-hearted farmer. He was satisfied upon prideful in himself upon the healthy abundance rather than the style in which he lived. As enraptured Ichabod rolled his great green eyes over the fat meadowlands, the rich fields of wet rye, buckwheat, and the Indian corn, and the orchards burdened with ruddy fruit which surrounded the warm tenement on Van Tassel. His heart yearned after the damsel who was inherit these domains. From the moment Ichabod laid his eyes upon regions of delight, the peace of his mind was at an end. He had encountered a host of fearful adversaries, numerous rustic admirers who beset every portal to Katarina's heart, keeping a watchful and angry eye upon one another, but ready to fly out the common cause against any new competitor. Among these most formidable was Pearly roaring, roistering blade of the name Brom One Brunt, the hero of the country round, which ranked his feats of strength and hardihood. He broad-shouldered, double-jointed, with short curly hair and bluff, but not unpleasant countenance, having a windlet air of fun and arrogance. From his Herculean frame and great powers of limb, he received the nickname Brombones. He was famed for the great knowledge and skill in horsemanship. He was always ready to lead a fight or frolic, with more mischief and ill will his composition, and with all overbearing rawness, the strong dash of waggish good humor at bottom. This run Tipol hero had for some time singled out Catherine for the object of his uncounted gallantries. And it has whispered that she did not altogether discourage his hopes. Certain it is, his adventures were a signal for a rival candidate to retire. Was a formidable rival with from whom Ichabod Crane had to contend. To have taken the field openly against his rival would have been madness. Ichabod therefore made his advances in a quiet, a gently insuiting manner. Under cover of his hard-tailed singing master, he made frequent visits to this farmhouse. Ichabod would carry his suit with the daughter that the great elm or sauntering along the twilight, that hours of favorable to lovers' eloquence. Brom, who had a degree rogue or chivalry, in his nature, would have settled their pretensions to lady by single combat. But Ichabod was too conscious of the superior might of his adversary to enter lists against him. He had overheard a burst of bones that he would double the master up and lay him on the shelf of his own schoolhouse. And he has to worry to give him opportunity. Ichabod became an object of mystical persecution by Bones and his gang of road riders. They smoked out in the his school by stopping up the chimney, broke the schoolhouse at night, and turned everything topsy-turvy, so that the poor schoolmaster began to think all the witches in the country held their things there. Still more annoying, Brom had a scoundrel dog whom he taught to whine in the most ludicrous manner, and introduced as rival of Ichabod, instructing her in psalmody. In this way matters went on for some time. On a fine autumnal afternoon, Ichabod, in pensive mood, sat at Horned lofty stool, whence he usually watched all concerts of this literary realm. He was suddenly interrupted by appearance from a man with an invitation to Ichabod to attend, merrymaking a critic frolic, to be held at an evening town Menhero and Titles. The gallant Ichabod spent half hour on his toilet, so that he might make his appearance before his mistress in the true style of cavalier. He borrowed with a horse from the farmer with whom it was domiciliated, and thus gallantly mounted, issued forth like a knight errant in a quest of adventures. I should, in the spirit of romantic story, give some account of the looks and equipments of my hero and his steed. The animal he had bestrode was a broken plough horse that had outlived almost everything but his viciousness. Still, he must have a fire and metal his day, if we may judge the name he bore of gunpowder. Ichabod was a double fighter for such a steed. He rode through short stirrups, which brought his knees nearly up to pommel of the saddle. His sharp elbows stuck out like a grasshopper's, and as his horse jogged in, the motion of his arms was not unlike the flapping pair of wings. A small wool has rested on the top of his nose, for a scanty strip her head might be called, and the skirts for his coat fluttered out almost to the horse's tail. Such was the appearance of Ichabod and his steed. As Ichabod jogged slowly on his way, he journeyed along the range of hills that looked out upon some of the goodly scenes of mighty Hudson. It was toward evening that Ichabod arrived at the castle of the hero of Antassel, which he found adorned with pride and flower of the hundred country old farmers, their brisk, withered little dames, their buxom lasses, and their sons. Brombones, however, was the hero of the scene, having to come to gathering of his favorite steed Daredevil, a creature like himself, full of mischief, and no one himself could manage. And now the sounds of the music from common room or hall summoned them both to dance. Ichabod prided himself upon his dancing, as much upon his vocal powers. Not a limb, not a fibre about him was idle, and to have seen his loosely hung frame in full motion and clattering about the room, you would have thought Saint Vitus himself, that blessed patron of dance, was figuring before you in person. The lady of his heart was his partner in the dance, and smiling graciously, replied humorous uglings, while Brombones, sorely smitten with love and jealousy, sat brooding with schemes in the one corner. When the dance was at the end, Ichabod was attracted to a note of the Sager folks who, with old Van Tassel, sat gossiping over local tales and superstitions. Several of Sleepy Hollow people were present at One Tassels, and as usual, donning their wild and wonderful legends. The chief part of the stories, however, are upon favorite spectre of Sleepy Hollow, the headless horseman, who had been heard several times of late, patrolling the country, and it was said that he scores nightly among the graves in churchyard. The sequestered situation of the church seemed always to have made it a favorite haunt of troubled spirits. Over the deep black part of stream, not far from the church, was formerly a wooden bridge to the road that led on it, and